Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Today, I want to talk a little bit about a conversation that happened at Thanksgiving dinner. We had the whole family at my brother's. We were talking, small talk and things like that. And a lot of my family knows that if you want to engage me in conversation, the easy topic to bring up is fishing, and I'm going to get engaged in that conversation. Well, one of the people at the table kind of asked about the whole cheating thing with the walleye guys and the weights, because as a non-fisherman, that's what he knew about cheating in fishing tournaments. And he had just kind of learned about my fishing tournaments and things like that. And so Mark, I want to ask you about this whole cheating thing in fishing. Are you worried about it? Is it a big deal? Well, I think the conversation and the way the conversation went might be kind of interesting to those of us who are in the know about fishing, about how the way people who aren't really fishermen perceive and talk about cheating in fishing tournaments. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Stick around, guys. Welcome back to Mark Fisher Outdoors, everybody. I'm Mark Fisher. So like I said, this conversation around the Thanksgiving table really kind of opened my eyes to how the non-fishing public views cheating and what they look at compared to what we know about. So again, this person at the Thanksgiving table really was talking about the whole walleye fishing scandal where the guys were putting weights into the fish. And so we talked about that, and that's what they knew about, and that's what a majority of the non-fishing public knows about. And so I shared the more recent event where the gentleman was fishing a charity tournament on West Point and actually had a basket of fish tied to a buoy and was looking to cheat by that means, where he had fish in a basket and was gonna allegedly go retrieve those fish out of the basket and use those fish, to win a tournament. And their eyes went wide, like, holy cow, that's an amazing, issue in terms of how brash of these people to put weights in fish and put them in baskets. And then we went into more stories of how guys will tie fish to certain docks and cast out and try and snag the line that is attached to the fish to make it look like they're actually fishing and they've actually reeled in the fish. And then we went into the big story about the fellow who put them in baskets but had a hole in the top of the basket where he could flip his jig through the hole in the basket, get the fish to actually bite, and then pull it out, where he was actually cheating when he had a co-angler in the boat watching him, except he just kept making the same cast to the same 6-inch or 8-inch diameter hole until he ended up catching 5 fish from the exact same spot and cheating that way. Their eyes were just wide when they heard these tales of cheating that we've all heard either through YouTube or through just angler, talk and things like that. But that wasn't the part that was so interesting. It was because when they asked me, well, how worried are you about cheating? And how much does that kind of thing, weights and fish in baskets and all of those kinds of things, how much does that concern you? And my answer was, guys, I'm really not that concerned about guys putting weights in fish and about fish being in baskets. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that there are guys who routinely get waypoints, get information, and those things are against the rules as well. And when they kind of, wait a minute, it's against the rules to get information. Yeah, there's rules that state that we're not able to get information. But if that person over there gets information from a buddy who lives on the lake or from people who know about the lake or whatever, where I don't. Now he's spending his 3 days of practice with that information, which makes that 3 days of practice much more valuable and much more refined than me, where I'm going to the lake without that information and I'm trying to figure that out during those 3 practice days. That's the kind of rule violation that really is more practical to me. Why, when I'm following the rule, that has much more of an impact on me than the person who chooses not to follow the rule and get that additional information. And that's the rule that is much more difficult to police and to monitor and to catch people who are breaking that rule. And that was something that I don't think the non-fishing, at least again, in my Thanksgiving dinner, the non-fishing public had no clue that A, that was a rule, and B, they could absolutely see the significance of how people who break that rule could do it without getting caught and could do it where it would have a significant impact on the end result of the tournament, where somebody who went into practice knowing a little bit more about the lake than someone else would have a much greater advantage than someone who didn't have that. It's interesting that the things that get noticed by the non-fishing public are the weights and the baskets. But the other things, when they do hear about it, are just as eye-opening and just as, wait a minute, then what's the solution? And, it's, again, interesting that why do they make that rule? Why don't they just not have that rule there? Why don't they just say, hey, everybody can get information and, at least that way it's a level playing field? Kind of interesting their knee-jerk. And again, guys, I realize that there are reasons that you say, no, you can't do that. But it's interesting that when you talk to just people who aren't in the know about fishing, they'll say, oh man, weights and baskets and all of those terrible things. But they can see that those are one-off kind of situations and that a lot of times those people eventually will get caught. Whereas the people who are gathering information beyond the times that they're allowed to get information, there's very little chance of ever catching them. And it does have a significant impact on how those people do compared to people who don't do that. I just think that it was an interesting conversation and one that I wanted to share with you. And I'm absolutely interested to hear what your feedback is. I think we can all assume and all say that any kind of cheating is bad and shouldn't be allowed, and there should be consequences for those who do it. Doesn't matter whether it's bass fishing, basketball, football, or, floor hockey. But if you can't enforce the rule, then what's to say that somebody isn't going to break the rule? Guys, I appreciate you tuning in. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow on Mark Fisher Outdoors. Hey, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. We appreciate you, and we'd like you to become part of the Mark Fisher Outdoors community. We'll see you again tomorrow, everybody. Take care.